Welcome back to another discussion about adding short rows for fit of the shoulder. And we've talked about this quite a bit in class, so I want to just go over it one more time. Why do we want to add short rows at the shoulder to facilitate the fit, especially on a raglan type or yoke sweater, and in particular when we're knitting from the top down. Now, when you're knitting from the top down, most patterns will accommodate or allow you to add the center front stitches in stages so that the front, as you can see, the front of the neck here will be lower than the back of the neck. But that's not always the case. And in the sweater that some of us are making in class, the petal sweater, that is not the case. If you've taken my beginning in the very first sweater class where you're making the dumb baby sweater, that's also not the case. All of the stitches necessary for the entire circumference of the sweater at the neck are cast on at the beginning, which means that the front of the sweater and the back of the sweater are going to be exactly the same level, meaning the front of the sweater is going to be at the same level up here where it is on the back of the sweater, which would make the wearing of it uncomfortable. Ideally, we do want to lower the front of the sweater so that it falls at the level of the collarbone. So we'll want our sweater to curve around the neck this way. Okay, so how do we achieve that? We achieve that with short rows. And basically what we're doing is we're lengthening the distance on the back of the sweater only, so that this section here is longer than this section here. Okay, and we are going to achieve that by incorporating some short rows, meaning we are going to be working some extra rows on the back of the sweater. I've got a little sweater going on here, and I am of course this yoke is not deep enough for a real body, but this is just a sample. And I'm going to incorporate my short rows into a different color when I get to that point. But first I want to talk about where do you decide to put the short rows. And if you're working with worsted weight yarn, as I am here, the short rows, you generally only need maybe 3 sets of short rows. If you're working with very fine yarn, you might need 5 or even a little more, depending on what your row gauge is going to be. But generally speaking, you want to separate your turning points 5 stitches apart. And that is just so that the beginning and end of the short row are blended and not, this obvious point where you're turned. So here I am. This is the sweater here. Here are the sleeves, and then here's the back. So what I'm going to do is determine where I'm going to put my turning point. So I said 5 stitches apart. Here's the front of the sweater. This is the part that's really not going to get the extra rows. This is the part that I want to be shallower than this part up here. So I'm going to come to the where the beginning of my arm is. Here's my first arm marker. So I'm just going to count over 15 stitches, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Oh, I don't have enough. Let me make that for demonstration purposes shorter. I'm just going to put them 3 stitches apart. So my first turning point is going to be here, and I'll just put a marker there. And then 3 stitches from that point, and I'll put a marker there. And you know what? Here's my other point here. I was debating for a second there if I should just do 2 short rows, but I'll go ahead and do the 3. So I've marked my turning points on this side, and I'm going to come over to the other front, and I'll do the same thing. I'll mark my turning points. So here's my first turning point, and my second turning point, and my last turning point. 3 stitches apart. Okay, in this case. So that 5 stitches apart is a kind of standard, but you don't have to. Don't have to do it. And actually, just because I'm thinking the video might end up being, as many of my videos are, way too long, I'm just going to do 2 short rows instead of the 3. I'll take 1 marker down. Okay, so I'm just going to work across in pattern to my furthest turning point. And what I'm going to do when I get to the point where I know that the short rows should start is I'm going to switch colors just so that you can see where I'm. Okay, so this is where the short rows are going to be worked. So I'm just going to switch colors at this point just so that you can see how these develop. And the section with the short rows I'll work in blue. Now here I'm coming to my raglan, and you know what, I'm still working in pattern, so I am going to do my increases on this raglan because I'm not at the end of my shaping for that, so I am working my increases there. If this was a yoke sweater, like the petal sweater that some of us are working on, you will be incorporating the short rows at the end of all of the patterning so that there aren't any more increases or decreases involved. But if you were doing this on a sweater that has, let's say it's a plain sweater with no color pattern or anything like that, just the increases for the raglan here, you could still do your short rows at, even though there's some shaping happening right there. Okay, so I'm coming up to the next sleeve, and I'm going to do my increases at my increase points, and I'll work across the sleeve. Here's my increase point. Move my marker over, increase. Some more. I'm just working with acrylic yarn, which I often do for my whenever I'm trying out something new or I want to demonstrate something, because I don't keep these bits of knitting a lot of the time. Okay, so here I am to my last increase point for the sleeve shaping, that is. And move my marker over, increase. Okay, so now here I am at my other markers. These are the markers that are my turning points. So I'm going to get to the stitch before the marker. Okay, so I'm going to just slide that stitch over. I'm going to remove the marker. I'm going to put the marker on the working yarn. I'll slip my stitch back over onto the left needle, and I'll go ahead and work it. Now what's happened is the, let me turn this so you can see, the marker is now on the working yarn. It's between the last 2 stitches that I worked. And I'm going to go ahead and turn around. This is not the wrap and turn short row method. This is a variation of the Japanese short row method, which my particular way of working it. So I've turned around, I'm going to purl back, I'm going to slide the first stitch over as if to purl without working. I'm just sliding it over, and then I'm going to continue purling all the way across to my next turning point. And you'll see there is this humongous gap here. But we are going to deal with that in a second. After I work the second short row, I will tell you, or show you rather, how to pick up those strands that we've marked with the safety pin to close that gap. And the reason I like this particular method is because I knit relatively loosely. My gauge is super loose. And the regular wrap and turn, where you're actually wrapping the yarn around the stitch and then utilizing that wrap to tighten the close the gap later on, just always looks rather sloppy for me. It's just my particular quirk. So I thought I'd share with you guys the method that I've chosen to use that works a little better for me. But almost there. Okay, here I am to the end of the sleeve. So I'm just purling across here, end of the sleeve. And I'm going to go ahead and work up to the next turning point. So here I am. Okay, and so I'm going to first slip over the stitch, move my marker, put the stitch back, and I'm going to put the marker on the working yarn, go ahead and work my stitch. I'm pulling my yarn in because that's where I joined in the other color. Okay, and then now I'm just going to turn around. And I'm going to slip the first stitch as if to purl, the yarn in back, and then work across to the next turning point. Let me go ahead and do that, and I'll be back with you in just a second. Okay. So here I am now at the next turning point. Just a few stitches here. Bear with me just a second. Okay, so here's my next turning point. There's my marker. So I'm just going to slip my stitch over, take the marker off, put it on the working yarn, slip my stitch back over, and then go ahead and work it. Now that I've worked that stitch, I'm going to turn around, work back to my other turning point. You can see, before I do that, I will take my first stitch and slip it over as if to purl, and now I can work across to the other side. And again, we have this humongous gap. But we're not going to be overly concerned about that because, again, we will be using those little strands of yarn that we're marking with the pin to close the gaps in a specific way. And let me get across to the other side here. Okay, so here I'm working across the sleeve section. At this point, we have added a few stitches at the raglan points. I think I added another 8 stitches, but if you're working on a sweater that is yoke-free, when you're doing these short rows, we're not changing the stitch count. Okay, so here I am. So I'm going to slip my stitch over first, remove my marker, put that stitch back on the left needle. Put the marker on the working yarn, and then go ahead and work the stitch and turn around. Turn around and slip the first stitch as if to purl over, and now work across. Now I've completed my short rows because I've come to both my turning points. Both of my pins are now in the fabric and no longer on the needle. So I've completed my short rows. Now I'm just going to work across to my first turning point where I have to close the gap, and I will get to that point and then show you how to pick up or close the gaps rather. Okay, so I'm working along here, and now I've completed my short rows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, instead of turning around, I'm just going to finish my rows, picking up, if you used another wrap and turn method, picking up your wraps, or in this case, closing the gaps. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So here I am, and here's my pin in the back. You can see it back there. So I'm going to go ahead and work all the way up to the gap. And here's this big old break. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pin and pull up that that strand that the pin is holding onto here. Okay, I'm going to put that strand on the needle, and I'm going to knit this strand together with the next stitch. I'm going to do a knit two together. And tug on it a little to make it nice and smooth. And now I'm going to knit up to the next marked stitch. Here we are. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to roll this back so I could see where my, drop the yarn there so you can, here's my my pin holding the strand right there. So I'm just going to take my needle, put that onto the needle, and now I'm just going to do a knit two together, tug on it a bit, and then finish the row all the way to the end. Okay, so I'm going to finish the row all the way to the end, and then I'm going to work back. I'm going to work back and pick up my, or close my gaps on the purl side. So here I have now completed the row, and you can see I have quite a bit more height here than I do there. So let's get over to the other side. Okay, here I am. I'm getting to the point where I'm going to be closing these really humongous gaps here, and I'm on the purl side. So on the knit side, I did a knit two together when I pulled up that extra strand. Now here, I'm going to work all the way up, including the stitch right before the gap. And here's my other strand, the one that the pin is holding on to. And I am going to put that right onto the left-hand needle. I'm going to remove the pin. And I'm going to go ahead and purl that stitch. Place it, after I've purled it, place it back onto the left needle, and then take my right needle and pick up the stitch directly after it and pull it over. Once I've done that, I'm going to slip it back onto the right hand needle and then continue working along. So now I'm going to work up to the next stitch, and I'll do it again. So I'm going to pick up my marked strand. There it is. I'm going to pull it up and put it on the left hand needle. Bring my yarn forward, purling. Go ahead and purl that stitch, and then after you've purled it, slip it back onto the left hand needle. Then take your stitch directly after it and pull it over as a bind off. This is really loose because that's where my color change was. Okay, and then slip that stitch after you've pulled the next one over it back onto the right hand needle, and then continue purling across after that. This is an alternative to purl two together through the back loop, which is rather awkward, and I generally do not like. I mean, you could do purl two together through the back loop, but that is my alternative to that. Okay, so let's take a look now at what we've got. I did the color joining there. Let me totally. So what has happened, as you can see, is I've got a lot more rows across the back than I do across the front. And then on the other side as well. Of course, I haven't worked this row here yet, but I've got the same thing going on. Now, when I fold my sweater, when I take this and fold it, now what has happened is that the back of the sweater is taller. The back of the sweater is taller than the front of the sweater. And you can see how that the shoulder also has some added space here, which will make the sweater fit nicely over the top of the shoulder and the back, and dropping the front of the sweater forward so that it's not riding up on your neck. Okay, I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email